Alright, hey, so today's video we're going to be looking at percents. So we've been working a lot with fractions and decimals, and now we're going to look at converting some of these things into percentages. So first of all, we need to remember that for percents, the most important thing to know that percent literally means part of 100. So that's why 100% on a test is a perfect score, because we are rating something out of 100. The reason we use percents is basically it's like using a common denominator. It makes life easier for us because we can compare those numbers very easily. If I told you that 30% of people from Newfoundland liked fish and 35% of people from the Northwest Territories liked fish, you can very easily compare which group, which had a larger group in the population that liked fish, despite how many people there were in total. So, just after that review, we can now look at a couple problems. So, if we take, first of all, something simple, 3 over 4. So, we know 3 over 4 is the same thing as 3/4, okay? And if we think about money, we know that 3/4 equals 75 cents, right? And that's because 3/4 as a decimal is 0.75. So this is the decimal for the fraction 3 over 4. To turn this into a percentage, there's two ways we can do this. First way is to times it by 100. So I could take 100 and times it by 0.75. Well, I know 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 1 is 5. Okay. I know 7, since I've moved on to my second place, I need a 0 here. I know 7 times 0 is 0, 7 times 0 is 0, 7 times 1 is 7. Now, I could do this 0 as well, but we know we're just going to get 0, 0, 0, so no point doing it. So we're just going to continue. 0 plus 0, 0, 0 plus 0, 0. 5 plus 0 is 5, and 7. Now, we have two decimals, okay? So when you're doing multiplication with a decimal in it, you count up all the decimals in the numbers in total, and that's how many decimal places you need your answer. So the answer is 75. So that's how we find our percent. So that's 75%. Now, you'll notice both of them look like 75. And that's because there's a trick we can use here. So if we just erase this, okay? If we take 0.75, times it by 100 is the same thing as moving the decimal place twice. So when you're trying to go from decimal, to percentage, D to P, okay, you move the decimal place 2 to the right. So for example, we have 0.75, okay, I'm going to move this once, twice to the right. Now my decimal place is here. I can erase the 0 and I can erase these lines. So again, like we had earlier, there's our 75.00, which we ended up with, or 75%. So all you have to do is just move that decimal place twice, and then you're going to get your percentage. If you want to do the opposite direction, if we wanted to go from a percentage back to a decimal, we just have to do the same. We just have to do the reverse. So here is our 75%. Right, there's 75%. If you want to turn that into a decimal, you just bring it back once, twice. Our decimal now goes here. Because we have a decimal, we need a 0 in front. Because there's no number in front of it, we can erase these lines now. The decimal's got to stay there, though. Erase these lines, erase the percentage symbol, and there we go. We're back to our decimal of 0.75. So when we go from decimal to percent, it's 2 to the right. Okay, decimal to percent is 2 to the right, going this way. And if we're going back the other way, percent to decimal, it's 2 to the left, coming this way. All right, so for more complicated questions, I think the decimal to the percentage part might be the easiest part. Because if I give you another question now, if I say we have if I say the decimal is 0.89, Okay, and we want this as a percentage. Well, it's the same thing, right? We just said decimal to the percent is 2 to the right. Okay, two places to the right. So 1 place, 2 places to the right. There we are. So there goes my 0. There goes my lines. There's my new decimal place, and the percentage is going to be 89%. Now, sometimes these can be tricky. If we're going back the other way, for example, if we want 50% and if we want 5%, the question for you, it's a pretty ugly 5. We got 5%, we got 50%. If I give you 0.5, I want you to take a second and think about it. Is 0.5 5% or is it 50%? If you said 0.5 is 5%, I'm sorry, I disagree, because 0.5 is 50%. Another way of thinking about it is, when we're talking about decimals and transferring to percentages, we're talking about a whole as being 1. So if our whole is 1, right, and we can prove that this equals, we can actually prove that 1 equals 100% by putting 2 decimals after it, okay, and shifting it over twice, erasing it. There's our decimal place, 100%. Right? So it's 100% of 1 is basically what we're talking about. So right here, 0.5, okay, whatever you're talking about, is 50% of a whole. Because we know that 0.5 plus 0.5 equals 1. Now, people often get confused with this. When they think of 5%, they'll often say, well, 5% equals 0.5, and that's not actually the case. 5% would equal 0.05. Because we have to remember, you have to move the decimal place twice. So if I move the decimal place twice, once, twice, my decimal is here. Okay. Now when I go to make my percentage, well, I don't really need the 0 in front, and it's really just 5%. However, if I look at 50, okay, if I take 50% and I move the decimal place twice, there's my 50%, move the decimal place once, twice, there's my new decimal, okay. Oops, I went the wrong way. I knew something didn't seem right there. Sorry. So we got 50%, move it to the left because we're going from decimal to percentage, once, twice, my new decimal is here. Okay, I can erase this. So my decimal would be 0.5. Because we know that really any number, once the numbers stop, there's really infinite zeros here. We've talked about this in class. These zeros could go on forever. I could keep drawing them this way. I could keep drawing them off the screen here. Really, there's just zeros forever. And that's really what a decimal is. These are just another place value. Just like really, if we think about 51, the number 51, just for no other reason, really, in the hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000 spots, there's just zeros here. It's just there's no point writing them because there's nothing in that spot. Okay, so I'll do more questions in another video, but that's just a quick review on going from decimals to percents.